Awesome. Hey, thank you everyone who came to today's presentation. My name is Hilmar. I'm from Gelato. And today I want to talk to you about the ABC stack, which is a new rollup stack that we've been developing at Gelato. And it's the first stack that broke the 1 gigagas per second barrier. And it's a new form of rollup stack that we are very excited about, which is called sovereign rollups. And today I want to talk to you about the motivation behind building it. What is kind of like the reality of rollups today in Ethereum? Then actually, from our experience with working over 50 different rollup customers, what do they actually want? And then, how ABC was designed to actually address some of these problems that we identified. So why am I on the stage talking about this today? Well, we, in the past like 1.5 years, we worked with a bunch of different teams together and helped them deploy their rollups. A lot of notable teams that you might have heard about using all sorts of different stacks. I think we used the ZK stacks, the optimistic rollup stacks, all of the different sort of frameworks that you might be aware of. And we look always, of course, how our customers are using those, what are the use cases, and do they actually use certain services as if they're like they're designed to be used or not. Then of course I will talk a bit about like ABC Stack and why for a certain user group we believe it's actually a very interesting and compelling use case. So just as a reminder for all of us, I think there's a lot of confusion oftentimes to like how rollups really work. So a rollup, at the very essence of it, is a blockchain that posts its data, it posts its transactions to another blockchain in order to outsource security and consensus around an ordered list of transactions. That's basically it. That's like a common definition of what a rollup is. Now, where a lot of the confusion usually arises is that in most of today's sort of rollup frameworks, we always have a bridge enshrined to the actual rollup itself. So we talk about the rollup as, when we say rollup, we usually mean the rollup and the bridge. And why this is the case is because these rollups were designed with like Ethereum as kind of like a hub in mind. So when they were first sort of initiated a couple of years ago, there was like, okay, we have Ethereum. Ethereum is the base layer for everything. On Ethereum, we will create all the assets. We will issue all the assets. And then we will have these sort of network extensions to Ethereum where people can bridge assets into, out to again. And we can secure this bridging via proofs, fraud proofs, ZK proofs. You can do TEE proofs, whatever you like, right? And this is really what people think about Ethereum L2s today, what a rollup is. They usually say it's the rollup plus the bridge. And what we did is we had the L1, then we had L2s on this L1, and now there are L3s on top of L2s, and now there might be L4s on top of L3s, right? So this is kind of like this sort of hub and spoke architecture that arose. And why do we sort of like do this, right? Why do we design it? Well, because as I mentioned, these rollups were not really thought of as like individual chains that should do their own thing. They were like more like network extensions to Ethereum. So they should actually feel like Ethereum, but not being part of the sort of layer one. Back then also we had a bunch of like very complicated bridge hacks, and bridges were like custom built for every single L1, and there were a lot of issues with that. So enshrining this bridge into the system kind of like made sense. And back then, literally 99% of all the assets were issued on Ethereum, also the stable coins, right? And so, thinking that Ethereum is the hub for all the assets also made a ton of sense. But let's look at some data here, right? This data is directly pulled from like L2Beat. What do these sort of like layer 2s that you see right here have in common? ZK Sync Base, Real, which is a real world asset chain, Arbitrum, and so forth. Well, all of them actually have the majority of the assets on their chain natively issued on the rollup itself. So these assets, the biggest chunk of the TVL of these chains actually do not come from Ethereum anymore. Even though like this was like how most of these things were designed at the very beginning, these chains have the highest percentage of the TVL issued on the chain themselves. So like on Base, it's mostly like USDC, for example, and the issuer is actually Circle on Base and not Circle on Ethereum and then bridging into Base. It's like directly issuing on Base. And there are some where this percentage is over 90%. Now, this is another set of chains, like Rhea is, for example, Perpdex, that is working together with on Gelato. Bob is like a Bitcoin L2, also on Ethereum. Mode, Inc. is also a sort of L2, is working together with us. So what do those have in common? Well, the majority of the assets for those chains is actually bridged in from other chains, not Ethereum. So they don't use the canonical bridge that is enshrined to Ethereum to bridge over these assets. They bridge them over from all sorts of different other chains, maybe Solana, maybe Base directly, maybe Arbitrum directly. So these, TLDR, they are using these rollups quite differently than they were designed, if you look at this. And this is kind of like a snapshot of like the entire sort of rollup space. You see that for all rollups that exist, or for all L2s that exist, 47% of all the issue assets are already natively issued on the chains and not on Ethereum anymore. Ethereum is not the asset issuance platform that we thought it would be at the very beginning. Like the dynamics have changed. And what I basically sort of want to sort of make you think today is, okay, if that's the case, if already 47% of all the assets are issued on these rollups, could you make the case that these rollups today are already 47% sovereign and actually not Ethereum L2s, or they are only to a very small percentage, 38%, still Ethereum L2s? This is kind of like how I sort of like want you to think in this presentation. So we analyzed a lot of chains. We worked together with a lot of these chains, right? And when I talked to them, when I asked them, okay, what are you actually looking for in building your ecosystem, your application, your blockchain? They usually come to me with like 5 things. One, of course, very simple. I want extremely high throughput. I want low cost, right? And even today, a lot of the chains that exist do still have pretty limited throughput. Also, transaction fees sometimes go up, especially if Ethereum data availability, Ethereum blob space is filled up. Then the second one is pretty important. It's they want to onboard users very easily to their own ecosystem. And they want to do it fast and cheap. And the problem is, every single time you need to force someone to go via Ethereum to join your chain, you have to pay pretty hefty fees, and it becomes quite slow. That's why a lot of new chains actually want to onboard users via existing rollups or existing other layer, chains like Base or Inc, for example. Then, of course, you would like to have access to like all the liquidity in the world. You want high security, low cost. And this is also interesting. You want more control over your chain. This control means you want to control how transactions are getting sequenced. You want to control how blocks are being built. And there are actually applications and organizations that want to have control over who can transact on their blockchain, right? Ethereum is a lot about censorship resistance. So everyone can always transact. You can never stop them, right? But if you think about like companies actually like building products that want to interface with Web3, then they need some sort of permissioning because they have to be compliant with a lot of things, right? And they might not want to allow the Lazarus group to execute some transactions on their rollup, especially if they are the biggest application on top. So are these sort of L2 assumptions that we set out at the very beginning still valid? Well, after like talking to a lot of developers, I think, and it's sometimes the brutal truth, but I don't think they care that much about scaling Ethereum. They care about scaling the application, right? Ethereum is like a platform they can use in order to achieve this, but it's not about scaling Ethereum per se anymore. It's about, hey, I want to create a successful application in the space. Also, like bridging changed a lot. Like back then, there were like Ronin bridge hacks and so forth, but these days you have pretty solid like interoperability, cross-chain messaging protocols that have a variety of different security modules that can be ZK, optimistic ZK, or just like attestations, like Hyperlane Layer 0 that are pretty robust if you look at like the TVL and sort of throughput they support. Then users actually onboard mostly via stablecoins, especially like USDC. And USDC is still issued on Ethereum, but it's also natively issued on Base, Arbitrum, Solana, and so forth. So if you want to onboard users, you probably don't want to go via Ethereum. You just issue USDC straight on Base or on Solana, then you bridge from Base and Solana to your chain, and bam, you got your user onboarded. Why would you go via Ethereum? It's slow and expensive, and it's not more secure, because the settlement layer for USDC is Circle servers. It's not Ethereum. It's not a native Ethereum asset. Yeah, and so this is sort of like what we came up with after looking at all of this. So we believe that there's this world where there's this big industry which is like, we want to scale Ethereum, and we want to build this sort of like network extension layer on Ethereum, which there's a lot of traction already, and I think it's working very well. But I think from talking to a lot of customers, I think a bunch of chains, a bunch of projects actually do not want to scale Ethereum. They would rather just build and have control over their own blockchain that can interface with Ethereum, but Ethereum is not different to like a Solana to them, or like even a Ton, or like a Base. It's so like all equal. And this is really what the ABC stack tries to achieve. It tries to be this, like it tries to cater to this audience. And it does so at a really impressive performance that I will go into in a moment. And so the design philosophy of ABC, what it is it's an app-centric stack. It's not an Ethereum-centric stack. So rather than having this application, Ethereum in the center of like your solar system, you have your application at the center, and Ethereum is just a very large sort of planet hovering your own planet, but it's not different to any other planets like Solana or Base or Ton, for example. You interface with them all the same. It's much more like a mesh network design than it is like a hub and spoke. You can think of more like the Cosmos sort of like architecture and design pattern than like the sort of like L1, L2, L3 pattern. And what it focuses on really is it basically completely gets rid of an enshrined bridge. You cut it out completely. You don't have that anymore. There's no opinionated way to settle to a specific chain and define your rollup based on some light client that you enshrine. But it basically is just, hey, you bring the interoperability system you want. You can bring a hyperlane with like an attestation service. You can bring layer 0 that secures your chain with Google. You can bring Circle if you pay them a lot of money, right? It's completely up to you how you want to interoperate, with whom you interoperate, and what's the security you would like to have. Now, we have some pretty good performance on the stack. So it does 1 gigagas per second with a throughput, which is sort of like 100 times that of like most other sort of like technologies that are currently available. It is very much based on Celestia. Why Celestia? Celestia as a DA layer has the highest throughput already today, has one single slot finality, which is great for interoperability, and basically from a roadmap perspective will already provide capacity that is way higher than what Ethereum will probably achieve in the short to medium future. Though, of course, I still want Ethereum to scale a lot, and I'm rooting for it. But yeah, I think they have to increase the pace a bit to compete against guys like Celestia here. There's this nice chart with the banana zone on the top right. This is like the Gigagas banana zone, which ABC Stack is on. And yeah, you see like versus Base today what type of throughput is possible. So you can really like bring everything on chain that you want. This goes into the modular interoperability. As I said, ABC has multi-chain settlement. So you don't settle to you don't have an enshrined settlement to Ethereum, which defines your rollup. You just have a modular interoperability protocol. You can settle to 6 different chains at the same time, but like you are still like a sovereign chain. And how you want to deal with bridging is completely up to you. And yeah, so this is, I think, how we think of like rollups in the future. They want to directly interoperate with all these ecosystems, and they don't just want to be like connected to one of them and then have this be the asset issuing platform. You want to have assets that are issued on Solana. All the meme coins should come to your platform. Ton, who knows if it will still be successful in a couple of years, but if so, you probably want to be interoperate with it, right? So this is kind of like the architecture more that ABC embraces. Some other really cool features that it has that I think is very powerful based on sort of customer feedback that we heard. One is custom block building. So you can define your own block building rules on the stack. You can avoid MEV, you can update Oracle prices at the top of the block. Or pretty interesting for enterprises, you can say only certain users can actually transact on the chain and can bridge assets in and can bridge assets out. We don't want anyone who doesn't comply with these rules to interact with us. And this is actually how I see the future. We'll have all sorts of companies deploy their chains. They all have to adhere to compliance on like different countries and so forth. But you always have these neutral chains and neutral layers like an Ethereum or other chains to still go to and then enjoy full censorship resistance. So I think they are just like different sort of products, different use cases. Then you have a native gas token capability, and this is not a custom gas token. So this is not like a token that you deploy on Ethereum and bridge in, and you can use it for gas. This is a token that you issue on the chain and use for gas natively. So it's like Ether on Ethereum. It's truly native asset. Then of course it's one-to-one EVM compatible, so no changes at all, and it's ZK forward compatible. So you can just like click a button. You can upgrade your bridging security to ZK. Right away if ZK becomes fast enough and cheap enough, which it is not today, unfortunately. We ran these things in production, but I'm pretty hopeful that with the work of all these amazing teams like ResZero, Succinct, and all the other guys, that we will get there sooner rather than later. So yeah, it's already forward compatible with that. And just like as some examples here, how you can sort of take the stack and make it yourself. If you have a DeFi chain, let's say, how would it look like? You have DA, Celestia. You have interoperability, use like the Hyperlane messaging protocol. You want to have high security, you have 500 million in the bridge, well, use Succinct or ResZero to verify bridging transactions via ZK. And you probably want to be connected to Solana, Arbitrum, and Ethereum because they're the highest TVL chains in the EVM ecosystem, right? Let's say you're a gaming chain. Should a gaming chain be like ZK right now? Probably not, right? Probably it has only 500K in TVL. Probably it just wants to mint some weird ass NFTs. So I think having like a 3 out of 4 multi-sig sort of like attestation service to bridge these assets in and out of this chain is totally fine, right? If you can cut costs down and if you can get latency down of like bridging in and out, which is what games want, perfectly fine, right? And you probably don't want to be connected to Ethereum. You probably want to be connected to Ronin or Base or some other ecosystem, right? Yeah, and like finally, like enterprises, as I already mentioned, you probably want to be OFAC compliant. You want to probably blacklist Lazarus. You want to not have them be able to interact on your chain, right? This is all possible, and you probably don't want to post your data to any public DA layer. You want to keep it private. You might want to use ZK to verify that everything has been run correctly, but that's it, really. Yeah, so ABC Stack is now available on our Rollup as a service platform among the other like leading Rollup stacks in the industry. You can actually literally click it in 5 minutes. So like you come to a website, you click a button, 5 minutes, you got the chain. Like the fastest deployment in the industry. I guarantee that. Yeah, so ABC is really for building everything in on-chain and how you want to, and not being opinionated based on sort of some legacy way of thinking about you as an application or a project. If you want to build, come to us, come to me after the talk. We have a booth as well. Yeah, we'll of course love to support you. Thanks a lot for listening in. Clicking through blockchain debris, crypto notes flutter.